Hello, hello, Shagat Unknown here. Welcome back to Divinity Original Sin 2. Long overdue. I am here to simply record some of the alternate endings that we missed out on. You know, you can only pick one, obviously. And I had promised to do this a while back. Unfortunately, it didn't work out that way. I had a festival coming up 2 days after I finished this game, and I really just got too wrapped up, like packing and getting ready and everything, keeping up with my job and all that. And when I got back, I had COVID, which didn't really do much to me. It was really just some heavy congestion on my end. It didn't really do much else to me, but I didn't want to record videos while dealing with that kind of congestion. So here I am now, a little over a month later, gonna go ahead and take care of these endings. I'm gonna kind of just let the thing speak for itself. I'm not really going to do anything in the way of commentary, but I will be just reading the dialogue lines. So we're going to go through the rest of the alternate endings. I'm leaving all the like slideshow kind of footage that are describing, you know, the different effects of the endings, and we'll talk to everybody on the Lady Vengeance. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get right into it. Fulfill your destiny as the God-woken. Become the new divine.
And so it ended. A tale that began with my own ill-fated attempt to rid the world of the God-woken. A new divine rose, a true heir to the Seven, more powerful than ever, and united Rivellon in its battle against the void. All across the realm he was loved, worshipped and adored. Humans, lizards, elves and dwarves all rallied to his banner. The great allegiance stood once more, but the war continued. From the depths of the void, the God King still sought to return. As for me, I was freed of the God King's terrible tyranny. I avoided an eternity of pain and suffering. Now I fight for the other side. Now, I fight for the divine.
Well, well, look what the cat dragged in. A god, no less.
He smiles at you fondly as he takes you by the hand.
You've done us proud. You saved the world, didn't you?
Say you didn't save it alone.
No. We were all of us instrumental, but only one walked away with divinity. I'm glad it was you.
Ask if there's anywhere he'd like the Lady Vengeance to bring him to.
Home, if you don't mind. After all, I've dragons to raise. I need to teach them to be good boys and girls before they set the entire world on fire. There may be an accident or two along the way. Please don't hold it against them. I do so long to see my palace again. The Forbidden City. The scents of spices and incense. The sound of sitars in far-off rooms. To sit all day in perfumed shade and watch the white of the marble change with the journey of the sun. But above all, I long to be with Sadher. Long to finally have the time to love.
Wish him the brightest of futures.
Oh, but before you go, remember how when we first met, I took you by the jaw to inspect your teeth?
Chuckle. What an amusing memory. You'd almost forgotten.
Not something one forgets in a hurry. Now, if you'll recall, despite having no culinary skills whatever, as per your own testimony, you can tailor and groom. Two quite indispensable talents. At the time, of course, I couldn't have foreseen the adventure ahead, but now that it's quite over, I'd like to renew the opportunity for you to become my slave. What say you?
Does he realize he's asking a god to be his slave?
Well, only the best for the Red Prince. Surely you must realize that by now.
You escaped an abominable prison and confronted the king of all gods, only in turn to confront divinity itself. A rather poetic arc, don't you think? Not that your story is finished, of course. Your divinity shines upon all who walk Rivellon. And there will be those that escape to the shadows. You must be ready to face them, whenever they might emerge.
Ask if he has any advice for the new divine.
As a matter of fact, yes. Source makes for an excellent ally in matters of a demonic nature. Not only can void seep through the veil, but the beasts of Nemesis might similarly slip out of their own plane. Whether you are clever enough of a divine to keep Damien's disciples confined to Nemesis, I can't say. But I think we'll know soon enough. And I suggest you be ready.
Wonder what Jehan might get up to next.
Now that I am clear of mind and free of intruders, I'm wondering if it isn't time to share my learnings with the less enlightened. And to that end, I have a few ideas worth considering. Once I've come to a conclusion, I promise you'll be the first to know.
Wish Jehan well and be on your journey, or be on your way.
Until we meet again.
The flaming hatchling bounces and cheeps out of sheer excitement.
Fresh air! Freedom! There's no containing me now!
Beast Spirit smiles as you approach and begins to sing a tune you think vaguely familiar.
Here the wild beast just sails on the ocean. He's docked in the bay and coming your way. Off on the yawn, you hear the commotion. He's docked in the bay and coming your way. The cupboard can't hide you, nor can your berth. His daggers don't care about the gold that you're worth. He'll bury your bones neath a mountain of earth. He's docked in the bay and coming your way.
He pauses, then continues to hum, all the while working his ghostly whiskers.
Well, if it isn't the new divine gracing me with his presence. How honored I am.
Remind him who he's speaking to and tell him that he ought to show more deference.
Tarquin's smirk wilts into a glow.
I didn't come all this way to show deference. Some friendly advice. All who rise are capable of falling. Gods, the divine, anyone. Remember where you came from. The last thing this world needs is more tyrants.
Ask him what he'll do now.
That is the question, isn't it? How does one top the greatest feat of necromancy ever conceived? I might have the answer to that. Tell me, have you ever heard of Gustavgen? No, of course you wouldn't. It's a written language, unreadable to most, but myself naturally. It comes from a mysterious race from another world, beings that feed on minds. I intend to seek them out. This Gustavgen seems to guard portals to their realm. And once I've uncovered one, well, Why settle for being the greatest mind in just one world, and there's another for the taking?
Well, well, Quirkers. Look who finally graced us with their presence. I suppose some thanks are in order.
Shake your head. He doesn't have to thank you for anything.
No, you should be thanking me. I just saved the world from the Great Acorn. You're welcome, by the way. Honestly, Quirkers, some creatures have no sense of perspective.
Bow and thank the squirrel for his service.
A huge grin slowly spreads across the squirrel's small face.
Of course, had you not stopped this God King and his lackeys, there would have been very little left for me to save. So...
The cat moves forward, twisting around your legs and filling the air with the sound of dry, dusty purring.
Ah, Quirkers! Please, have a little decorum.
Laugh and tell Sir Laura they've been through a lot. He should relax.
This battle is won, my friend, but we still have a war to fight. We've undone the Great Acorn, but the Knights of Dre are still out there. They summoned the Great Acorn once. They will be able to summon it again. We have to destroy their order, once and for all. That is the future Quirkers and I have ahead of us. We no longer need a shield, but we are very happy to have a friend.
Ruffle Sir Laura's fur, the big softy.
The squirrel tenses for half a moment before relaxing into your fingers.
Ah! Oh, hi, Quirkers. You never told me it felt this good. Well, that was certainly an experience. Of course, this has all been something of an experience, eh?
Smile and agree. You never dreamed you'd end up here.
I don't suppose any of us did. I never thought I would be proud to have befriended a giant. But there is no one I... Ow! Quirkers! There is no one that we would rather have walked this world with. I do not know what comes next for you, but you will always have a friend in the forest. Come, Quirkers, we must... Oh, I think you have something in your eye, my friend.
The cat curls up and snuggles into his squirrel friend, who quietly sits and sniffs on the deck.
Amazing I'm still here. That we're still here. That Lucian... Well, that relationship always was complicated, wasn't it? You're so much like him. My instincts tell me to kneel to the new divine. I've done so before, after all. But I can't drive myself to do it again.
Nod in understanding. You don't want unquestioned devotion. You want a friend.
Gareth beams. For the first time, he is his own man. Yet his enthusiasm is not a man's, but a child's.
A friend, yes. That I know how to be.
For a moment, his mind wanders to memories of friends and enemies, of malady and magisters, of demons and divinity. He is then in the present once more and smiles at you.
Friends.
Ask what happens next for him.
I find a way to fit. I wasn't just content to lurk in Lucian's shadow. I was his shadow. Now I stand in the sun as my own man. I just don't know who that man is. And so I find out. My goal is to have a goal, if that makes sense at all. And if it doesn't, well, that's all I've got.
A slight grin crosses the spirit's face. Whether her smile is sincere or not, you can't be sure.
I see great potential in our new divinity. I don't expect to be disappointed.
Oh my, you! Look who it is! Our brand new Lord and Savior.
She curtsies low and looks up at you with a grin.
So, what's your first order of business? End world hunger? Instigate world peace? Send all spiders back to hell where they belong?
Ask her how it feels to be free. Once and for all, of all that haunted her.
I don't know if anyone's free of anything, once and for all. But I'm bloody thrilled to be here now. Just me, myself, and you, of course.
Tell her you plan to start rebuilding what the Void destroyed.
Big job. I'd offer to help, but I've got some business of my own to attend to.
Take a wild guess. She's going to hit the road with a bunch of filthy artists and get her old band back together.
Ding, ding, ding! My loot calluses are all but worn off. I'm a disgrace. So, Chief, I guess this is it, right?
Say you guess so, but you won't forget her. Not ever.
Her face softens.
You know, I won't forget you either. Not ever. It's not every day you fall in love with a future god, after all. You'll ace it. I'm sure of that.
As she turns from you, the whites of her eyes darken, the veins in her face go grey, and a wicked smile curls her mouth. Suddenly it's gone again. She winks, and you're left wondering whether you saw anything at all.
See you around.
You're the new Divine. That's so cool. What's it like?
Tap your head. Divinity revealed an archive of knowledge within you, and you can't wait to explore it.
Oh, that sounds more boring than I thought it would. There's also the matter of my payment for all the stuff I've done for you. That'll be...
He taps his fingers and mouths silently while he counts, until he arrives at an acceptable figure.
1,300,000 dozen and 50 teen gold pieces. Now pay up.
Laugh and tell him you've got a better idea.
Oh yeah? What's that?
Tell him he is a true warrior, and the Divine is in need of a bodyguard.
Han ponders your suggestion for all of a second.
You got it. Everybody better watch out. Han will get you if you come too close, but you better believe the bill for that will be a doozy.
I've never been fond of what the Divine stands for, but I must say, it's rather exciting to say I've been up close and personal with one.
Remark that you hope she's reformed her ways after winning back her freedom.
Reform my ways? How adorable. No, I'm afraid I cannot escape who I am and what I've done.
Her eyes flick down to your mouth. She smiles coyly, then slinks forward to kiss you.
Give in to her.
Her mouth meets yours and devours you with predatory abandon. Somewhere in the recesses of your mind, you think you hear her voice sigh, "mine." But then the kiss ends.
Something to remember me by, darling.
Ask what's next for her.
Who knows? A nice cottage someplace quiet for Mahalia and I. A roaring fire and a feather bed. Maybe. Maybe. But a girl needs some fun, doesn't she?
Ifan gives you an appraising glance. Curiosity mingled with an emotion you can't quite put your finger on. Reflected in the mirror of his eyes, you see yourself, majestic, powerful, emanating an aura of purest source. Ivan's lip curls slightly, and he looks away.
So, you're it. Our new Divine. I truly hope you'll do better than Lucian. Be better.
Tell him you'll do your best.
You'll need to do even better than that. But if anyone can, I believe it's you. If I can give one last piece of advice, remember that you serve the people, not the other way around.
Ask Ifan what he'll do now.
I need to fix what my actions destroyed. I'm going home. I'm going to return to the forests where I grew up, where the death fog detonated. I'm going to plant new seeds and see fresh shoots spring from the earth. Maybe we'll see each other again sometime.
He pauses, as if about to say something else, then shakes his head. With one last nod, he whistles up his soul wolf and lopes away. Melody stands tall and proud, sunlight sparkling off her mask. From here she looks almost angelic.
Well, here we are again. You, me, and the ship I've saved from ruin for your personal benefit. I'd say you owe me, but why state the obvious? Get an eyeful, Your Holiness. I expect it's the last we'll see of each other for some time.
She turns to you, arms crossed, and grins.
Look at you. Magnificent.
Tell her she doesn't look too bad herself.
Actually, I've never looked better. Except for one small thing.
She fingers the mask covering her face. For a moment, it seems as though she's about to remove it. But instead, she places a hand on your shoulder.
We've come a long way together. I did my best by you all the way. I sacrificed much. But I'd give even more to see you become exactly what you've become. Soon, I'd like to have a little chat about something you can do for me. But I believe that can wait. Relax. Enjoy. I certainly plan to do the same.
Ask where she plans to go.
Oh, I don't know. Around and about. Treat myself to some mead, a lover or 300. I'd say we've earned it. And when the time comes, I'll come find you. Your Holiness.
It gives me almost as much pleasure to speak to you as it does to be whole again.
Remark that it is good to see her. The Lady Vengeance has been a dependable ally.
I will always be an ally to those that carry swords, to those whose blood is of the heroes of old, and so, as always, I am at the ready.
Ask how it's possible she is here and unharmed.
Consider me to be a gift from Malady. My wood was splintered, but my spirit intact. It was a great feat, but given her skill, not a surprising one. I feel better than new.
Tell the Lady Vengeance it is time to depart.
You look out to the endless beyond. The sun's light plays upon the waves, just as it always did. The sails flutter in the wind, just as they always will. And yet, something is different. You are different. And with a start, you realize where you must go next. You speak the command to the Lady Vengeance, and another chapter begins. War raged on. Arx remained the center of power as the races united behind the Divine. But the Voidwoken attacks continued as they did elsewhere. Arx would see many more long years of war. The ancient empire of lizards became one of the pillars of the new Divine Alliance. The Houses of War and of Shadows were particularly useful in the fight against the God King. The Empire used the war to expand its territory. Justinia returned to her throne. Under her rule, the Dwarven Kingdom fought for the divine, and her loyalty was unquestionable. Many fine and courageous dwarves did their people great honor in battle and in death. With Lucian gone, the elves reluctantly rejoined the Divine Alliance. Their place in the war on the Void would entirely depend on the integrity of the new Divine. And here and there, across the world, what was left of the Black Ring fought on. The island of Fort Joy remained a sorcerer's paradise, a place of exile for those whose sorcery threatened to bring in the Void. For their well-being, its residents depended entirely on the benevolence of the new Divine. Reaper's Coast struggled on. The farms and the fisheries fought to feed the people against the Voidwoken blight. The black pits took fire. The oil there burns still. Driftwood teetered on the edge of starvation until the night the Voidwoken came from the sea. All were killed. This did, however, put an end to the famine. The nameless isle had vanished. Although only open water remained, by instinct ships would steer clear. None of the captains could articulate why. Arks battled on. Sir Gareth thanked the surviving Seekers for their service and gave them their freedom. Disillusioned with ongoing war, he set out alone to find a new purpose. He would never stop seeking. Young Han grew up a warrior and became one of the Alliance's greatest generals. But even he could not win the war. Almira and Mihaili settled in an abandoned homestead. The locals liked and respected Almira. She never wanted for help, and deals always fell to her favor. Outsiders were often suspicious, but no local would speak against her. With a new divine at the helm, Malady had a powerful ally, but she was in no hurry to call in her favor. After all, it might be the last thing she ever did. Having performed the greatest act of necromancy in history, Tarquin found the new world unchallenging. He became obsessed with rumors of another plane of existence. One day he vanished and was never seen again. Ahu the Wizard served the new divine with honor, wisdom, and an at times unnerving feline elegance. The undead priestess Gratiana remained in her sanctuary, happy to wait for the war to pass. She was troubled only by the silence of her goddess. Jehan the demon hunter never stopped hunting for demons. Sahala sought to strengthen the Elven alliance with the new divine. Her powers of sight proved useful in the ongoing war against the Void, but she could never be sure that the new divine trusted her. Tova, her mother, was Sahala's most trusted warrior. With a small band of elves, Ifan ben Medst replanted the lost forests. After the first fresh shoots broke the earth, Ifan returned to the war, leading the elves in service of the divine. Some say Afrit, his soul wolf, walks the forest still. On his return to the Empire, the Red Prince was hailed a hero. He married Sada, and they had many more dragons. Soon, the prince became the emperor. Faced with dragons, the Void did not gain the upper hand in the Empire. Lohse returned to her music and enjoyed a storied career as the Divine's premier musician. Dark moods would still overtake her, and she would spend long hours walking in the wilds. She always returned with a new song. And then there was you. You, Fane, the eternal divine. What did you do with your power? What kind of divine were you as the world battled on? Did you show mercy or strength? Did you sacrifice others as Lucian had done? Did you regret becoming divine? Did you wish you'd surrendered the power that runs through your veins and sealed the veil? Only you know the truth. Only you know if you atone for your sins.
Allow yourself and all the world to be purged of its source.
And so it ended. A tale that began with my own ill-fated attempt to rid the world of the Godwoken. Dallas the Hammer, the secret eternal, purged the Godwoken and used the source to close the veil to the void. The world was saved. Statues in memory of the Godwoken who sacrificed their source were erected all across Rivellon. They would never be forgotten. The half-demon Malady took pity on the soulless Godwoken silent monks and brought them to the Hall of Echoes. There, from the scraps of their souls that remained, she restored them to life. Sorcerers no more, they lived out the rest of their lives, freed of the burden of being the Godwoken, freed from the weight of the world. As for me, I was already free, and so were the others. The Godwoken sacrifice severed the bond between the Sworn and the God King. To atone for my sins, I spent the rest of my days taking care of the sick and elderly, telling the story of the Godwoken, that the world may never forget the greatest heroes Rivellon had ever known.
Well, well, look what the cat dragged in. A silent monk. At least that's what you'd be if it weren't for Malady.
Ask what he thinks about Lucian's return.
Like I would about the return of the codpiece, that it's highly unfashionable. The man's a man, all too prone to the weaknesses of the heart. We've seen the results of his errors firsthand. I give it a week before he errs anew.
Weaknesses of the heart, he said. But what about Sada? Isn't he quite prone as well?
Yes, well, that's to say, that's love, not... All right, you made a point. Besides, Lucian, Perhaps even a god deserves a second chance, even if he is a god without powers. As for myself, I'm counting on a second chance as well.
Ask him to explain.
Why, I mean my empire, of course. I intend to go home as soon as I can. After all, I've dragons to raise. I need to teach them to be good boys and girls before they set the entire world on fire. There may be an accident or two along the way. Can't be helped, I'm afraid. I do so long to see my palace again. The Forbidden City. The sense of spices and incense. The sound of sitars in far-off rooms. To sit all day and
For the record, I'm going to skip through dialogue that we've heard for the sake of brevity.
The journey of the sun. But above all, I long to be with Sadher. Long.
Wish him the brightest of futures.
But remember how when we first met, I took you by the jaw?
Chuckle, what an amusing memory you'd almost forgotten.
Not something one forgets. Now, if you'll recall, despite having the time of what say you?
You know what? Say that sounds absolutely wonderful.
Well, that's settled then. You're very welcome to my house indeed. We'll feast and reminisce. But in the meantime, my boots are not going to clean themselves.
Without swords to shield it, the barriers between Nemesis and Rivellon weaken. The void may be kept at bay, but the plane of demons is not.
The flaming hatchling bounces and cheeps out of sheer excitement.
Fresh air! Freedom! There's no containing me now!
There's nothing interesting down. The future lies above.
Beast Spirit doesn't acknowledge you as you approach. He only sings, slowly, achingly, sadly.
You hear the wild beast just sails on the old cupboard, can't hide you, nor can...
He pauses, then continues to hum.
I always thought that those who resorted to self-sacrifice were lacking in imagination. But I must admit, that was rather noble of you.
Ask him what he makes of the new state of the world.
A world without source is one that will need individuals of wit and intellect. A sharp mind is the only magic now. I believe I shall enjoy this new world very much.
Ask him what he'll do now.
That is the question, isn't it? No, of course you wouldn't. I intend to seek them out. This Gustafjan seems to guard portals.
Well, well, Quirkers. Look who finally graced us with their presence. I suppose some thanks are in order.
Yeah, shake your head. He doesn't have to thank you for anything.
What? No, you're welcome. Honestly, Quirkers. Some creatures have no
Bow and thank
sense
the
of
squirrel
perspective.
for his service.
A huge grin slowly spread. Of course, had you not. The cat moves forward. Ah, Quirkers! Please, have a
Laugh and tell
little
Sir
bit
Laura
more.
they've been through a lot. He should relax.
This battle is won, my friend, but we still have a war to... They summoned the great Acorn One. That is the future Quirkers and I have ahead of us.
Ruffle Sir Laura's
We
fur,
no
the big
longer-
softy.
The squirrel tenses for half a moment. Ah! Oh, well, that was certainly...
Smile and agree. You never dreamed you'd end up here.
I don't suppose. I never thought I would... Ow! Quirkers! I do not know. Come, Quirkers. The cat curls up. The purging that once silenced you remains on your mind as you approach Gareth. You are grateful for Malady's miraculous touch. Without it, there would be no you.
Amazing, I'm still here. That you're here. And that you might still speak. That Lucian...
Say you thought he would be happy to serve Lucian once more.
Aside from a single blink, Gareth stands remarkably still.
Time. Time has a way of changing someone. Lucian did not start as the man he became. Nor is the man I am now the same as him that once served at the side of a divine. Lucian doesn't need me, And believe me when I say, I no longer need him.
Thank him for his service to the Seekers and to all who have depended on him.
I only did what I was meant to do. I don't deserve thanks. I gave only the bare minimum, and still I strayed quite far.
Gareth shakes his head vigorously in response to his own emotions.
Self-pity is as dangerous as any man I have battled, Alexander included. In this new world, this world without the 7 gods, it's a foe I plan to defeat for good.
Wonder what he'll do next.
I find a way to fit. I wasn't just content to lurk in Lucian's shadow. So I find out. My goal is to have a goal, if that makes sense at all. And if it doesn't, well, that's all I've got.
A slight grin crosses the spirit's face. Whether her smile is sincere or not, you can't be sure.
You are a very, very, very lucky person. If Malady hadn't restored us, I'd be a drooling monstrosity, but a vengeful one.
Tell her it was the best option for the realm.
The realm is a lot more robust than some people give it credit for. It's probably survived much more than we'll ever even know.
Ask her how it feels to be free once and for all of all that haunted her.
I don't know if anyone's free of any, but I'm bloody thrilled to be here now. Just me, myself, and you, of course.
Ask her what she'll do now.
Get loot, play loot, get loot, get glad. So, Chief, I guess this is it, right?
Say you guess so, but you won't forget her. Not ever.
Well, I mean, you can always come with me. I mean, I'm just saying, it's an option. If you want, maybe? I still love you.
As she turns from you, the whites of her eyes dart suddenly. It's gone again. She'll
see you around.
Are you okay? You don't look okay.
No more swords, no more powers. Don't worry, darling. I know you have plenty of other qualities.
Remark that you hope she's reformed her ways after winning back her freedom.
Reform my ways? How adorable.
Her eyes flick down to your mouth.
Give in to her.
Her mouth meets yours and devours you with
something to remember me by.
Ask what's next for her.
Who knows? A nice cottage, but a girl needs sun.
The betrayer.
Ifan folds his arms and steps back from you, as if your presence is toxic.
I suppose this is proof I've got really bad taste in friends. After all that we've been through since Fort Joy, after all that, to end up with Lucian once more, to settle for abject corruption over change.
He fixes you with a steely gaze, eyes burnished and shining like pebbles of hatred.
Tell Ifan it was the best option for Rivellon.
It was absolutely not. You listened to Lucian. You obeyed Lucian. After everything he did, you allowed him to take our source. And now you have restored a tyrant to power. I intend to spend the remainder of my days seeking to undo what you have done. It may not be possible, but when did that ever stop me before?
Ifan pauses, as if about to say something else, then shakes his head. With one last nod, he whistles up his soul wolf and lopes off. Malady stands tall and proud, sunlight sparkling off her mask. From here she looks almost angelic.
Ah, there you are. More than a silent monstrosity, less than a god. In the end, I'm not totally convinced it was worth my while to restore your consciousness, seeing what you've done with it so far. Where did I go wrong?
Ask her how she did it. How did she save you from being purged?
How is so boring. It's the why that surprises me. Unfortunately for me, I've grown rather fond of you. Still, I'd expected quite a bit more from you. I was interested in being owed a favor by a shiny new god, not some emperor of the realm. Never mind. I'll find another way. I always do.
She fingers the mask covering her face.
We've come a long way together. I did my best by you all the way. Sacrificed much. And I'd have given even more to see you fulfill your destiny.
She looks you up and down.
I guess this will have to do. Take a moment, why don't you? Relax. Enjoy. I certainly plan to do the same.
Tell her the Lady Vengeance looks as good as new. How did she do it?
The same way I do everything, of course. Demonic guile.
Ask where she plans to go.
Oh, I don't know. Around and about. Treat myself to some mead, a lover or 300. Perhaps our paths will cross again. Perhaps not. Until we find out.
It gives me almost as much pleasure to speak to you as it does to be whole again.
Remark that it is good to see her. The Lady Vengeance has been a dependable ally.
I will always be an ally to those that carry swords, to those whose blood is of the heroes of old. And so, as always, I am at the ready.
Say you're glad to see Melody manage to piece her back together.
She is full of surprises. I feel...
Tell the Lady Vengeance it is time to depart.
You look out to the endless beyond. The sun's light plays upon the way, and with a start, you realize where you must go next. At last, the world was at peace. As the races united behind Lucian, Arx remained the center of power. The ancient Lizard Empire opened its gates. The houses disbanded, and the Empire adopted a pluralist quasi-democracy. Anyone could vote for whoever they pleased, as long as the House of Shadows approved. Justinia returned to her throne. Under her rule, the Dwarven kingdom prospered, until 2 years later, a jealous lover stabbed her in the heart with a mutton fork. Lucian made amends to the elves. He gave them lands and vast riches from the coffers of the old divine order. But the elves never forgave him. They would not trust humans again. And in a dark forest on the far side of a desert, well beyond the high seas, the Black Ring came together once more. The island of Fort Joy, the old redoute of the Source King Brachus Rex, was turned over to the people of Driftwood to use as they wished. They turned it into a holiday resort. Reaper's Coast prospered. The fisheries returned, and the fertile farmlands produced the greatest harvests the surviving farmers had ever seen. Blood Moon Island became particularly fecund, its soil producing the greatest crops. A particularly crimson-fleshed orange grown on the island became a delicacy across half the world. The black pits took fire. The oil there burns still. Driftwood became a center of industry, trade, and transport. Lohar became mayor, and Brayton Barnes grew rich, until After a public argument over import duties, Barnes died in an accident, buried under several tons of fish, and also stabbed in the back with a gutting knife. Your lizard lover finally returned to the ancient lizard empire, there to found the newest and most popular of all the houses, the House of Love. The nameless isle had vanished. Although only open water remained, by instinct ships would steer clear. None of the captains could articulate why. Arx became a great metropolis, famed for its prosperity, its culture, its diversity, and the willingness of its denizens to stab each other in the back for the slightest advantage. Sir Gareth thanked the surviving Seekers for their service and gave them their freedom. Disillusioned with peace, he set out alone to find a new purpose. He would never stop seeking. Young Han went into the theatre and became one of the realm's most popular actors. Almira and Mihaili settled down on the farm. The locals liked and respected Almira. She never wanted for help, and deals always fell to her favor. She presumed she had them in thrall. The truth was, they just liked her. With no new divine, Malady found herself in a predicament. She had an important problem to solve, but no ally strong enough to call upon, and so her search continued. Having performed the greatest act of necromancy in history, Tarquin found the new world unchallenging. He became obsessed with rumors of another plane of existence. One day he vanished and was never seen again. Ahu the Wizard became one of Lucien's most trusted advisors once more. He always knew that something had changed in the divine. He never discovered what that was, or, if he did, he never said a word. With Amadia silent, the priestess Gratiana left the swamps and re-entered the world. She founded an abbey in the Dragonspine Mountains, offering the last of the undead shelter from fortune hunters, novelty seekers, and ghouls. Jehan the demon hunter found himself at a loose end, so he opened a museum of demonic artifacts. He made a fortune. With Lucien in power, Sahala took the elves away from the world. They grew strong once more amidst the trees of the regrown home forest. Some say her plans for revenge will bring about the end of days. Some say only Tova, her mother, holds her back. Lucien returned as divine, united the races, and became Lord Emperor of all Rivellon. Only Dallis knew that he was entirely powerless. Dallis and you. The Eternal, now known as Dallis, was a secret advisor to Lucien and to his successors. For eons she would walk in the world, and would outlive the peoples and all, and wander alone amongst the dying stars. With a small band of elves, Ifan Ben Mesd replanted the lost elven forests. After the first fresh shoots broke the earth, he disappeared, and was never seen again. Some say Afrit, his soul wolf, walks the forests still. The Red Prince came home a hero. With Sada, he had more dragons. Soon, Prince became Emperor, one who would not use his dragons for conquest. His realm knew peace, and the world did not burn. Losa returned to her music, and enjoyed a storied career as Rivellon's premier musician. Dark moods would at times overtake her, and she would spend long hours walking in the wilds. She always returned with a new song. And then there was you. In a world of peace, you could live forever. Your future was yours to decide. But you were a sorcerer no more. Did you accept your new status with gratitude, or did you rebel? Only you know the truth, you and one other. But of him you are free. The God King no longer calls your name. He no longer whispers your shame. Only you know if you atone for your sins.
Use the power of divinity to bring back the Eternals, but leave the God King sealed away behind the veil.
And so it ended. A tale that began with my own ill-fated attempt to rid the world of the Godwoken. The Eternals reclaimed the world. Dwarves, elves, lizards, and humans all became slaves, ruled over by the Sworn and the Eternals. Relics of the old world remained, but in time they crumbled and fell, like the memories of the peoples who had built them, lost to time like sand in the wind, but not lost to Fane. Fane would never forget. As for me, I was freed of one covenant only to be enslaved once more. But I am fortunate. I serve Master Fane now. My task, to chronicle the rise and fall of the Godwoken. This was their story. Master, I hope you approve.
The world as we know it will soon come to an end, and welcome an undead wasteland in its stead.
But the Eternals are back. Your people are home. Rivellon will be at peace. It will be paradise again.
The day will come when you realize your mistake, and on that day you'll come crawling back to me in search of absolution. It will be the day we take up arms together once more. May it soon dawn.
You escaped an abominable prison and confronted the king of all gods. Not that your story is finished, of course. Your divinity shines upon all who walk Rivellon. And there will be those that escape to the shadows. You must be ready to face them, whenever they might emerge.
I realized that actually was a new line. Confronted the king of all gods, only in turn to confront divinity itself. It's a slightly different line than what we had before. Ask if he has any advice for the new divine.
As a matter of fact, Source makes for an excellent whether you are clever enough of a
Wonder what
divine
Jahan might get up to
keep
next.
this now that I am clear of mind and once I've come to a conclusion, until we meet again.
The flaming hatchling bounces and
Fresher!
spirit does not acknowledge you as you...
You are your cub.
He pauses, then continues... Tarquin looks like he's about to unleash a cutting remark for a moment, but he thinks better of it, and offers a slight bow instead.
All of this, Quercus, all of our struggle to save their stupid, bloody giant races, and this fool lets his Eternals trample across this world. We didn't rescue your barren land from the great acorn to see it turned over to someone even worse than your damned people. I know, Quercus. I'm disappointed too. I thought we had found a true friend, but no. Come, we've lost our shield, but we still have each other.
Gareth bows as you near, but seems either unable or unwilling to speak.
Tell Gareth you are grateful for his sacrifices. The Eternals rise again.
The Eternals.
Gareth is still. For a moment his mind wanders to memories of friends and enemies, of malady and magisters, of demons and divinity. He is then present once more, though he speaks without a trace of emotion.
I eagerly await what comes.
Sibyl twirls her needle, her face set in a defiant scowl. Losa spits at your feet and stares at you with a curled lip.
Tell her she should be more respectful. The Eternals are back.
I didn't escape one demon to serve another. You haven't seen the last of me, but you should wish you had.
As she turns from you, the whites of her eyes darken, the veins in her face go grey, and a wicked smile curls her mouth. Suddenly it's gone again. She winks, and you're left wondering...
See you around.
Leave me alone, okay?
If I'd only known what would become of you back when I first laid eyes on you. This is a curious world we live in.
Her eyes flick down to your mouth. She smiles coyly, then slinks forward to kiss you.
Resist her advances.
Almira pouts in disappointment, but it quickly morphs into a devilish grin.
Oh, no matter. We'll always have our first kiss. I haven't been quite able to put it out of my mind. Just as I'm sure you won't be able to put me out of your mind.
Remark, did you hope she's reformed her ways after winning back her freedom?
Reform my ways? How would...
Her eyes flick down to your mouth. She
Resist.
smiles. Almira pouts.
Oh, no matter.
Ask what's next for her.
Who knows? A nice cottage someplace, but a girl needs...
You.
Ifan folds his arms and steps back from you, as if your presence is infectious.
I suppose this is proof I've got really bad taste in friends. After all that we've been through since Fort Joy, after all that, to end up with a tyrant once more, to settle for slavery and corruption over change.
He fixes you with a steely gaze, eyes burnished and shining like pebbles of hatred.
Ignoring the look in his eyes, effusively thank Ifan for his help on behalf of the Eternals.
Your thanks are as hollow as your promises. I intend to spend the remainder of my days. It may not be possible. When did that ever...
Ifan pauses, as if about to say something. Malady stands tall and proud, sunlight sparkling off her mask. From here she looks almost angelic.
Well, here we are again. You, me, and the ship I've saved from ruin for your personal benefit. I'd say you owe me, but why stay beyond this? Get an eyeful. I expect it's the last we'll see of each other for some time. It isn't going to be easy cleaning up this mess you've made. It might not even be possible. I don't know how I could have been so wrong about you. I'm never wrong.
Tell her to accept fate for what it is.
How boring. No, thank you. You'll see, you little so-and-so. This isn't over. Until we meet again, all the best to you. I await but your word, Master.
Remark that it is good to see her. The Lady Vengeance has been a dependable ally.
As I was called to be, I am yours to command. My will is of no consequence, even as we sail into darkness. And so, as I must, I say, I am at the ready.
Ask how it's possible she's here and unharmed.
Consider me to be a gift from Nalady. A shame I must be given life anew to know the pain ahead. A pain that will endure.
Nod silently. You would like to depart.
You look out to the endless beyond. The sun's light plays upon the waves, but you know it is not to last. The sails flutter in the wind, yet you know they are soon to still. And with a start, you realize where you must go next. You speak the command to the Lady Vengeance, and another chapter begins. And what of you? What of you, feign the eternal indeed? You were the key to it all. You set right the original wrong. And the seven were punished for their transgression. Are you proud of all you achieved? Or are you ashamed of your sins?
That one was unexpectedly short. I guess we were already told what happens to everybody else. Tell the God King it's time to return.
And so it ended. A tale that began with my own ill-fated attempt to rid the world of the Godwoken. The Eternals returned to the world. In the eyes of the God King, Fane was redeemed. He returned to his studies. Dwarves, elves, lizards, and humans all became slaves, ruled over by the Sworn and the Eternals. The God King had defeated the Seven and returned from the void. Relics of the old world remained, but in time they crumbled and fell, like the memories of the peoples who had built them, lost to time like sand in the wind, but not lost to Fane. Fane would never forget. As for me, I was freed of one covenant only to be enslaved once more. But I am fortunate. I serve Master Fane now. My task, to chronicle the rise and fall of the Godwoken. This was their story. Master, I hope you approve.
Now, I know I said I wouldn't do much in the way of commentary, but that felt remarkably similar to the last. There was very little change. I would suspect that the God King would have wanted to punish Wendigo, but didn't seem to happen.
Don't you dare look me in the eyes, slave, for that is all you are now that you bow to the God King. The world as we know it will soon come to an end, and welcome an undead wasteland in its stead.
Say he could still be an emperor. The God King is a magnanimous divinity.
Emperor of the dead, to sit on a cold grey throne amid a vast necropolis? Never. Your battle may have ended, mine continues.
What a pity. The stories that arise from the Rivellonian rabble will tell not of a savior, but of a sinner.
Beast's spirit does not acknowledge you as you approach.
You hear your cupboard.
He pauses, then...
You know what you've done. You've signed my death warrant, fool. The God King won't stand to the likes of me in this world. Not after I abandoned his cause.
Tell him that his disloyalty to the God King has its consequences. He'll just have to live or not live with them.
No. This world is one of your making, and it'll be yours to suffer in. I have prospects in other realms.
Say that the God King might have use of him yet.
I am nobody's tool. You never really knew me at all, did you?
All of this, Quercus, all of our struggle to save their stupid, bloody giant races, and this fool lets this God King enslave the world. We didn't rescue your barren land from the great acorn to see it turned over to someone even worse than your damned people. I know, Quercus. I'm disappointed. Come, we've lost our shield.
Gareth bows as you near, but seems either unable or unwilling to speak.
Demand he pledge his loyalty to the God King.
He slowly drops to his knee, his torso quaking and his jaw clenched.
I pledge myself to the King.
Gareth keeps his eyes to the ground for as long as you watch. His sincerity in this matter is unnecessary, only his obedience.
The flaming hatchling bounces and cheeps out of... Fresh air!
Sibyl twirls her ghostly needle. Losa spits at your feet and stares at you with a curled lip.
Tell her the God King prefers respectful subjects.
I didn't escape one demon to serve another. You haven't seen the last of me.
As she turns from you, suddenly it's got...
See you around.
Leave me alone, okay?
After all I had to do to free myself of the God King, you just gave in to him? You ruined everything. I want you to know that. Now get out of my sight.
Losa glares as you pass, her mouth set to a frown.
Wanted to double check to see if I could ask one of those other dialogue options I haven't tried yet. It's too late. Namely the one that said I did what I thought was best.
Ah, you.
Ifan folds his arm.
I suppose the ascension of the God King is proof that I've got really bad taste in friends. After all that we've been through since Fort Joy, after all...
He fixes you with a steely gaze, eyes burnished and shining like pebbles of hatred.
Command him to swear allegiance to the God King.
Please. My allegiance is my own. and I will never again bow to tyranny.
Ifan pauses, as if about to say something else, then shakes his head. With one last nod, he whistles up his soul wolf and lopes off.
I must say, I got the impression there that Gareth is quite the coward, I would say, because he immediately just bowed down when we asked him to, and Ifan really showed his courage by saying, "No, I refuse." Much respect to Ifan there.
Malady stands tall and proud, sunlight sparkling off her.
Well, here we are again. You, me, get an eyeful. Thanks, it isn't going to be easy cleaning up this mess. I don't know how I could have been so wrong about you. I'm never wrong.
Tell her she shouldn't speak that way to a disciple of the God King.
A cruel smile spreads across her lips.
Tell your God King he'll have to send much more than you to silence me. Until we meet again, all the best to you.
I thought it would be worth role-playing a little bit there, picking the bad options, I guess, the options that are trying to command others to obey the God King. Bad is subjective. Lady Vengeance will probably be sad like last time.
I await but your word, Master.
Remark that it is good to see her. The Lady Vengeance has been a dependable ally.
As I was called to be, I am yours to command. I am at the ready.
Ask how it's possible she is here and unharmed.
Consider me to be a gift. For a shame I must be given life anew.
Not silently, you would like to
the pain
depart.
ahead.
You look out to the endless beyond. The sun's light plays upon the waves, but you know it is not to last. The sails flutter in the wind, yet you know they are soon to still. And with a start, you realize where you must go next. You speak the command to the Lady Vengeance, and another chapter begins. And what of you? What of you, Fane the Eternal, indeed? You were the key to it all. You brought the Eternals back to the world and saw the God King enslave the thieves. You set right the original wrong. And the seven were punished for their transgression. Are you proud of all you achieved? Or are you ashamed of your sins?
And there we have it, Divinity Original Sin 2 Definitive Edition. We've wrapped up all the possible endings I can get on my current character. In order to get anything different, we would have to take some slightly different actions throughout the game, play as a different character, etc. Ooh, Design Production Director, why is your name specially colored? Interesting. I'd like to comment on specifically those two Fane endings. If I'm not mistaken, Fane was added as a playable character in the Definitive Edition. He was not playable. I'm sure he had a role. I'm sure he still had the same role in the lore and the story, but he was not playable in the initial release of the game, as far as I'm to understand. Thus, those endings, I don't know if they feel tacked on or not. Right after we pick our choice, we are given the usual kind of epilogue from Wendigo that tells us, you know, what became of the world and everything from her eyes. Both of them were exceedingly similar. The only real difference was that on the last one that we just did, she mentioned the God King was there. But the God King did not do anything to her. It did not, you know, punish her or anything of the sort, despite, you know, he was completely able to do that. He was now in power. There's no reason he couldn't do that. Those endings provided by Wendigo also gave us a general understanding of what happens to the world, that the human, well, not human, just the mortal races, their monuments fell. They stood for a while and they fell over time. The mortal races, the humans, elves, lizards, dwarves, they were enslaved. That was the same in both cases where the Eternals and the God King were brought back. So I guess we don't really need to see the character by character breakdown right before the credits, but it felt a little disappointing to not get anything and to just have a quick rundown of Fane, and it really didn't amount to much, unfortunately. So again, I still feel like we got the information that we needed to know what happened, but it just almost felt a little bit too tacked on, unfortunately. And that makes me sad to say. That's a pretty sad note to end on. But I definitely, despite I would never want to take that ending myself, I did like just the feeling of foreboding and despair that we had during those last two. It was a great touch. I noticed that during that last ending in particular with the God King, it was dark. It wasn't bright on the Lady Vengeance. It was dark. It felt very foreboding. So it was a good touch. I'm glad to have finally taken care of those last endings there that we had. And I think with that, it's time for me to wrap up this series. This was about a month in the making. This should be a quick edit. I'm just going to lop out some of the downtime of the loading screens and such, and this should be a pretty quick edit. I should get this up very quickly. Just for posterity, this was recorded on the 5th of July, 2022, and the local time is currently 1849. I'll give you an idea of when it goes up versus when it was recorded. But I hope to have it go up within a day or so, and of course YouTube has processing delays, so that will affect it as well. But I don't really have much else to say that wasn't said previously when I beat the game, other than thank you to everybody who watched. Thank you for putting up with my slight modifications to the game. I know some people may not enjoy it as much with the experience multiplier. I still had a lot of fun with it, and that's all that matters to me, is that I have fun with the game that I've played, and I've beaten the game twice before without doing anything like that, so it's just something I wanted to do this time, and I had a lot of fun with it. But again, if you watched this series and you somehow made it this far, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And that's all I have to say. I will hopefully be playing more CRPGs in the future, but given that this is a month after I beat the game, it's very clear that I haven't felt like returning to a game like this yet. These games take an exceedingly long amount of time to beat. I mean, this game was probably 100 hours or more when you factor in like loading and such. And I don't actually remember what the final save file was, but I think it is over 100 hours by the end. So these games take an exceedingly long amount of time, and what I have done since this game has been a lot of Noita runs, and I have played through the entire BioShock series. And it's interesting because in that month, playing through BioShock took 2 days. Playing through BioShock 2 took 2 days, plus 1 day for the Minerva's Den DLC. And BioShock Infinite took 2 days, plus 2 more days for Burial at Sea Part 1 and 2. And that was spread across the course of about 3 to 4 weeks, about 3 weeks. So it's really impressive how I'm able to play so many of those smaller, shorter games in less time than it took to play this game, essentially. Actually, it may be about equal if we're going just real-time weeks, but I was mostly playing BioShock on the weekends. On Saturday and Sunday, rather. Anyway, just interesting thoughts about, kind of where I'm at right now in my head on not really wanting to undertake something quite this large for a bit, but CRPGs are not done for me. I have a bunch of them on Steam. I have bought a bunch of them recently just because of how much I want to experience more. There are so many of them out there, so many of them that I already own on Steam that I've yet to play, and I'm really excited to get to some of those at some point. So anyway, enough of me rambling because I could do this all night. So without further ado, thank you again to anyone who watched, especially if you're still here in these final waning moments of the series. So I hope you will check out more of my content, whatever it may be. And until next time, have a good day, have a good night, whatever it is, wherever you're at, take it easy.